I knew something was wrong the moment the HR rep avoided eye contact and handed me a manila envelope like it was laced with anthrax. Inside, a single sheet, bolded at the top, adverse action finalization, immediate termination. No warning, no meeting, no explanation beyond the legalese in 8-point font that basically translated to, "Congratulations, you're screwed." Before I could ask anything, the glass door swung open and in strutted Mark, the new VP of Finance, looking like he just won a goddamn Oscar. "This means you walk away with zero," he said, flashing that smug, half-lip Wall Street smirk he probably practiced in the mirror every morning. I didn't flinch. I didn't give him the satisfaction. I just looked at him like I was filing a bug report in my head. Error, ego too large to sustain own weight. I calmly asked for a printed copy. He chuckled and said, "Sure, if you want a souvenir." I nodded. "Frame it, maybe." He didn't get the joke. HR squirmed behind him, clearly realizing they were witnessing something they hadn't fully understood. "Before we go any further, if you're listening to this, do me one small favor. Smash that like button and hit subscribe. I know 97% of people forget, but it helps way more than you think. Keep stories like this alive. And trust me, this one's worth the ride." Now, back to Mark and his smug little smirk. I left the room with the paper folded in half, no tears, no fight. That's what he wanted: drama, pushback, some kind of emotional spectacle he could use to justify the termination. But I gave him nothing, just a nod, a half smile, and silence. Because unlike him, I actually read the paperwork I sign. And I knew what they'd just triggered. As I walked past my old office, I caught my reflection in the darkened glass. Same cardigan I'd worn on my first day here 8 years ago. Same chipped nail polish from a week of skipping self-care. Same tired face. But behind my eyes, not defeat, not panic, just calculation. A slow burn igniting. You don't survive a decade in corporate program strategy without learning how to see the entire chessboard. And I had just watched a fool move his queen right into check. On my desk sat the little glass terrarium my assistant gave me last Christmas. I scooped it up, grabbed my mug, world's okayest manager, and walked out. No box, no drama. I heard someone whisper near the break room, "That can't be it, right? She's just leaving." Damn right I was. Because when someone cuts you off at the knees thinking you're crawling, they forget you were already underground, digging. No one noticed the quiet IT guy in the corner, Eli, watching me. He gave me the smallest nod. I returned it. He was the only other person who knew I kept a private backup of every major contract I ever touched, including my own, especially my own. So when the elevator doors closed and I finally exhaled, it wasn't sadness that filled my lungs. It was air. Clean, cold, deliberate air. I was no longer trapped inside their little glassbox circus. I was free, and they had no idea what claws they'd just tripped. But they were about to find out. 3 years ago, the company was in chaos. New leadership, mass restructuring, a revolving door of consultants selling efficiency, while gutting every ounce of institutional memory. People were too stunned or too grateful to still have a job to ask questions. Not me. I'd already lived through 2 mergers and a hostile takeover. I knew the signs. When they start using phrases like right-sizing, what they mean is, we're gonna gut middle management like a trout. I remember sitting in that beige conference room, across from a corporate lawyer who looked barely old enough to rent a car. My title was being preserved, technically, but my responsibilities were being spread thin, flattened, they called it. I'd have new dotted lines to 5 separate VPs and no direct authority over my team. It was the kind of structural change that screams sacrificial goat, and I wasn't about to get bled out quietly. So I called my own lawyer, Maggie, a shark in reading glasses who once redlined a contract so hard the VP of HR called her abrasive. I loved her instantly. "This is crap," she said, thumbing through the new retention agreement. "They're covering their ass and stripping your spine." She drafted an amendment. Just one sentence, hidden in the sea of clauses like a venomous jellyfish floating in bathwater. Clause 7.6, see in the event of unilateral adverse action violating role protections, all deferred compensation will fully accelerate. They didn't question it. Nobody reads the whole thing. They were so desperate to push the new org chart through, they signed off without a second glance. The amendment was filed, time-stamped, and executed. Just another scanned PDF in the labyrinth of digital HR. I printed a hard copy and locked it in a fireproof box at home, right between my birth certificate and a Polaroid of me flipping off my ex-husband in front of a notary public. Keepsakes. Back then, I didn't know exactly when I'd need Clause 7.6c. Just that I would. It wasn't paranoia. It was pattern recognition. When someone hands you a knife and tells you it's decorative, you still remember where you put it. So when I got that adverse action email and saw the words violation of role protections in the HR language verbatim, I didn't panic. I didn't cry. I just felt it click into place, like snapping a Lego into the base of a much bigger build. This wasn't revenge. This was gravity. I didn't need them to like me. I didn't need to scream or beg or plead my case in some soul-crushing performance review led by people who couldn't manage their own inboxes, let alone a team. All I needed was for them to follow their own damn paperwork. And if there's one thing corporate loves more than PowerPoints and buzzwords, it's pretending process matters. Because that's how they protect themselves. And in their arrogance, they assumed no one else was playing the same game. But I was. I just played it better. Now I had one job: wait. Wait for the system to trigger what I'd built. Wait for the data to hit their dashboards. Wait for the cold machinery of compliance to churn. The beauty of it? No button for me to push. It was already wired in. All I had to do was walk away. And when it hit, it wouldn't make a sound. Just a number. A transfer. A vacuum. A $9.4 million wake-up call. There's a strange ritual to being fired. It's not like the movies. No cardboard box. No applause, no dramatic meltdown. Just silence, sterile lighting, and the faint hum of a cheap air purifier pushing around other people's bad decisions. My office smelled like toner and betrayal. The framed thank you notes on my wall felt like museum artifacts now. Fossils from when the work actually mattered. I walked in with my shoulders square, heels clicking just loud enough to remind everyone I was still wearing them on purpose. I didn't say a word. No slamming drawers. No dramatic sweeping of the desk. I moved with precision. My coffee mug, my flash drive, a photo of my niece from her piano recital, crooked frame, glitter glue heart in the corner. I slid it all into my tote bag like I was packing up for the weekend, not walking out of the life I'd built across 8 damn years. The legal intern, what was her name, Jen? June, peeked in like she thought I'd detonate. She flinched when the printer roared to life. 16 pages, double-sided. Clause 7.6c. The signed amendment, 2 affidavits from the restructuring committee, my original offer letter, and the updated compensation plan. All time-stamped, all clean. I didn't even need them technically. The digital triggers were already coded into the compliance server. But I liked the feel of the paper. I liked the weight of it. Real things should be heavy. I stapled them in groups of 4 and slid them into a slim manila folder marked Records, Compliance. I left it on the edge of my desk, visible but not obvious. One day, someone will stumble on it, probably during a desk reassignment, and they'll realize what it was: a landmine long detonated. Amanda from Business Ops stepped into the doorway, wringing her hands like she was trying to dry them without a towel. "You're just going to take it?" she whispered, eyes darting down the hall like HR might materialize and vaporize her on the spot. I looked at her, calm as a prayer. "They already took it," I said, tucking my sunglasses into my bag. "Now it's just a matter of watching what happens when they do." She didn't know what I meant. Most people didn't. They assumed silence meant surrender, that a lack of fury meant a lack of fight. But silence isn't weak. Silence is what the knife sounds like just before it goes in clean. I passed the break room without looking in. I knew who'd be pretending not to watch. Mark would be in his glass office, probably refreshing his dashboard, already thinking about which budget line my salary would be absorbed into. Maybe using the savings to pitch a strategic reallocation during the next ops meeting. He loved that word, strategic, as if butchery sounded better when you wore a tie. The elevator was slow, groaning like it hated my timing. I hit the button for the lobby and pulled out my phone. Not to text anyone, just to check the time. 2:42 p.m., plenty of time. The final approvals usually run through compliance workflows by 3 o'clock. I timed my exit for a reason. By the time I stepped onto the sidewalk, the sun hit me like a dare. Bright, indifferent. Same sky, new game. The systems were in motion now. No shouting. No courtroom. No fists on tables. Just back-end code, legal automations, and the cold mechanics of corporate karma. You can't stop a train when it's already off the rails. All you can do is count the seconds till the wreckage makes the news. And trust me, I'd already started counting. Friday afternoons in corporate are always a performance. People pretending to care while watching the clock, half tuned into Teams, half already at happy hour in their heads. Legal likes to push filings through then. End of day, end of noise, no follow-ups till Monday. Quiet little executions tucked neatly between catered lunches and parking lot goodbyes. I knew the severance paperwork would finalize today. That's how they operate. Burn the body when no one's watching. The HR platform timestamped the action at 3:27 p.m. Final adverse action, voluntary resignation confirmed. Voluntary. That was their little loophole. Label me as someone who walked away, and they dodge everything. Bonus liability, RSU release, retention comp. In their minds, it was clean. In reality, it was the perfect trigger. Because 3 years ago, Maggie and I baked that word, unilateral adverse action, into clause 7.6, C, like a fuse in drywall. And their voluntary resignation filing? A full, documented violation of role protections. I never signed a resignation. Never consented. They checked a box and hoped I'd stay quiet. That's all it took. At 3:29 p.m., a background process in the compliance system lit up. It had no flashy interface. No big red warning. Just a single system message routed to 2 subroutines in payroll and compensation compliance. Clause 7.6, C. Triggered, executing full acceleration. From there, it moved fast. The system parsed my employee ID, cross-referenced retention agreements, and unlocked my deferred equity pool. RSUs, restricted stock units, previously locked behind future milestones, instantly vested. My unclaimed bonus rolled up from Q1 and Q2 into a lump sum disbursement. The executive trust Maggie and I had set up, separate from my personal bank account, was listed in the system as the destination wallet. 3:30 and 44 seconds p.m. First wire authorized. 3:30 and 59 seconds p.m. $2.8 million in RSUs released and sold at market rate. 3:31 and 10 seconds p.m. $6.6 million in deferred comp and bonuses liquidated, tax adjusted, and wired. Total, $9,432,870. Give or take a few cents. None of this made a sound. It didn't trigger alarms or red flags. That's the beauty of systems written by overpaid consultants who assume automation means set it and forget it. The clause wasn't rogue. It was approved, signed, encoded, executing exactly the way it was meant to. Mark, the VP, was still in the 3 o'clock strategy review meeting, probably talking through synergy targets and pipeline optimization with the CFO, maybe even bragging about the severance savings he just created. Meanwhile, $9.4 million was being vacuumed out of the company's M and a reserve account like the final breath from a punctured lung. I didn't feel anger, not even pride. That had all burned off weeks ago. Now it was numbers, systems, processes doing what they were designed to do. All I'd done was show up on time, read the fine print, and trust the machine to behave the way corporate always claimed it would. Funny how nobody believes in policy until it burns them. I was sitting in my living room when the notification hit my phone. Trust account. Funded. Wire confirmed. I didn't even flinch. Just muted my work email out of habit. Not that I expected anyone to write. Not yet. They wouldn't know until it hit Mark's dashboard. And when it did, it wouldn't come with context or courtesy. Just a number. A missing piece of their balance sheet. And a system note too cold to be questioned. Executed per contractual acceleration clause. Reversal not authorized. Like I said, this was never about revenge. It was about math. He saw it in real time. Midway through a slide about resource optimization post-integration, Mark's laptop screen flickered, then stabilized. Nothing dramatic, just a quiet shift in the corner of the dashboard where financial disbursements roll in live from payroll ops. He kept talking, something about Q3 variance mitigation, until his eyes snagged on the line item blinking orange. $9,432,870. Wired to trust account. Accelerated disbursement. At first, he didn't understand what he was looking at. You could see it, how his mouth kept moving, but the words dried up behind his teeth. His eyes darted to the far right column. Account ID mine. Transaction type. Executive clause acceleration. Source pool. Deferred comp plus retention equity plus executive bonus rollover. Purpose. Full disbursement. Status. Complete. Mark stopped mid-sentence. Just stopped. Like a wind-up doll whose key slipped out. The CFO raised an eyebrow. Something wrong. Mark didn't answer. Just slowly turned his laptop so legal could see it. The junior counsel leaned in, then sat back so fast he nearly tipped his chair. That can't be right. It's real, muttered one of the senior lawyers, squinting at her phone. I just got the same flag. Clause 7.6, C, was tagged and processed through the compliance server. All sign-offs trace back to restructuring year 3. 3 executive signatures. It's legit. Mark's lips moved, but no sound came out. He blinked, then blinked again, and then finally a twitch left eye, the kind you get from stress or too much caffeine or realizing you just accidentally wired nearly $10 million out of your acquisition budget and there's no undo button. Wait, what does full acceleration even mean? He asked, voice thin, papery. The room went dead quiet. Legal didn't even look up. It means, one of them said quietly, you triggered a contract clause that released all deferred compensation. Everything he was owed. Everything tied to future milestones. All of it. Instantly. Legally. Mark's face. God. I wish I could have seen it. But I didn't need to. I could picture it perfectly. That clammy, hollow look people get when they realize they were playing checkers on a chessboard the whole time. And me? I was exactly where I needed to be. Not gloating. Not dancing. Just sitting on my patio with a lukewarm cup of Earl Grey and a Google Doc open titled, In Case of Meltdown. I didn't need to celebrate, because celebration implies surprise. And this was inevitable. The only sound in the boardroom was the faint hum of the HVAC system and the soft shuffle of lawyers pulling up old contracts, trying to find a way out that didn't exist. There isn't one. Mark asked again, softer this time, almost to himself. How did we not see this? Because you didn't look, I thought. You were too busy counting what you thought you'd save to notice what you were risking. That's the problem with arrogance. It makes you blind to paperwork. It makes you think everyone else is bluffing. And when they're not, it makes you twitch. I closed my laptop, let the rest play out on its own. The system had done its job. Now I would wait. Monday morning came with storm clouds, figuratively and literally. Thunder cracked over the city like some bored god was keeping score, and inside the glass and chrome mausoleum they called a headquarters, the storm was no less biblical. CFO Lawrence Barkley, whose resting heart rate was typically somewhere between medicated turtle and mildly annoyed librarian, came tearing through the front doors like a man trying to outpace an audit. He bypassed reception. No greetings, no small talk, just a red face, a soaked overcoat, and a stack of printouts clutched so tight the paper crinkled at the edges. Where's Mark? He barked, barely slowing down as the intern at the desk pointed toward the 11th floor. The elevator doors closed behind him like the seal on a tomb. I wasn't there. Of course I wasn't. But I knew. I knew how the air felt before the hurricane hits. I knew what it sounds like when execs start shouting behind closed doors even though the walls are made of frosted glass and everyone pretends not to listen. What happened next was relayed to me by 3 different people, one from HR, one from finance, and one I'll just call janitor with an excellent memory. CFO, where is it? Where did it go? Mark, it's a clause error, rogue clause abuse. He exploited a loophole. Legal, pulling up a tablet with shaking fingers. It's not rogue, it's documented. Clause 7.6, C. Signed during the 2020 restructuring. All the approvals are here. CFO, your predecessor signed off personally, along with the old CHRO and VP of Compliance. Silence. Mark, well, revoke it. Roll it back. Say it was unauthorized. Legal, we can't. It's not just legal, it's automated. The clause tied directly to the compliance engine. It executed the moment you filed his departure as voluntary. Barkley reportedly sat down so fast the chair made a squealing sound against the floor. His hands went to his temples. Do you understand we're short $9.4 million for the acquisition closing next quarter? That was cash on hand. Reserved. Marked. Declared on the balance sheet. Mark. Well, maybe we can reclassify it as a payout. Goodwill or legal? No. If we try to reclassify, we'll have to restate our quarterly filing. That triggers investor alerts. Possibly an SEC review. And, she added grimly, Clause 7.6, C, is enforceable because it wasn't just in his contract. It's a template clause. Mark blinked. Template. Legal just stared. Meaning it may have been added to other contracts, other execs, high-value roles, anyone who negotiated in that window during the restructure. That's when the panic started to ripple. Slack channels lit up in legal and comp like a Vegas slot machine during a blackout. Searches for keywords. Acceleration, retention clause, material breach, trigger conditions. Whispers in corners. Someone said the head of data ops had gone quiet all morning. Another said the director of procurement hadn't signed into the VPN since Thursday. A network of fear unfurled, cell by cell, because what I'd triggered wasn't just a payout. It was precedent. And no one at the top had any idea how deep the clause went, or who else had been smart enough, paranoid enough, or prepared enough to do what I'd done. I became the ghost in the machine. No desk, no nameplate, no Slack handle. But every discussion now began with my initials. Every decision passed through a new filter. What if it's another one of hers? They'd reduced me to a line item. And now that line was an open wound bleeding cash and credibility in front of the very investors they were trying to impress. Me? I was having a quiet brunch. My phone vibrated with a text from someone in finance. WTF did you do? Barclays in cardiac arrest mode. I typed back, then deleted it. Too cheeky. Instead, I just sent, read clause 7.6, C. And breathe. It's enforceable. No need for gloating. No need for fire. The house was already burning. They say corporate collapses are loud. Shouting, firings, media headlines. But this wasn't loud. It was the soft, surgical sound of power slipping through fingers. A slow unraveling, like a zipper catching in reverse. By Wednesday, word had reached the acquiring firm's legal team. An email flagged for high priority, urgent, compensation acceleration, unscheduled disbursement. It included screenshots, transaction logs, and a brief summary from internal audit, scrubbed and still sweating. The clause, the timing, the $9.4 million hole. The phrase non-reversible appeared 4 separate times. The acquiring company, Let's Durham Group, didn't react immediately. No angry calls, no pulled contracts, just silence. Then came the questions, wrapped in polite language and cold intent. We'd like clarification on accelerated liabilities. Was this payout disclosed during diligence? Do other compensation packages contain similar clauses? Can you certify no further disbursements are pending? Corporate speak for, you've got rot in the walls. Prove to us the house won't collapse the second we step inside. By Thursday morning, the whispers turned into movement. 2 resignations landed in HR's inbox. Quiet, clean, unceremonious. One from the director of engineering, the other from someone in strategic partnerships. Both exit interviews were nearly identical. Contractual concerns. clarity of terms, seeking environments with more predictable compliance exposure. Bullshit, of course. They knew what I knew. The clause was in more than one file, and if mine triggered, others might too. The difference? I'd been patient, methodical. They'd decided to walk before the floor gave way beneath them. Inside the company, things started curdling. The CFO, once Mark's biggest cheerleader, began showing signs of public frost. Where there had once been banter and boardroom backslaps, there was now radio silence. He asked legal for a full audit of all executive agreements post-2020. The request was marked high priority chair visibility. The board? Now they were watching closely. The same people who'd let Mark run wild with his efficiency initiatives and cost-saving terminations were suddenly unsure, skeptical. The VP who once cut headcount like a hedge trimmer at a gardening convention was now the man who'd cost them a headline acquisition. Not officially, not yet, but the dots were connecting. As for let's endure 'em, they didn't back out. Not officially. They paused. Pending internal review of material compensation exposures, the email said. Appreciate your transparency during this unexpected review window. I almost laughed when I read that phrase. Transparency. Like that was ever something they practiced when it wasn't convenient. From my apartment downtown, I watched it all unfold through quiet pings and secondhand accounts. Texts from old coworkers. Screenshots forwarded with no comment. I kept my notifications on mute, drank my tea slowly, and let the storm roll on without stepping outside. Because the truth is, I never wanted this. Not the acquisition collapse. Not the board panic. Not the exodus of good people who deserved better. I wanted my money, my exit, my peace. But if you spend years building a house out of shortcuts, you can't act shocked when the walls cave in after the first storm. They thought cutting corners made them smart, efficient, untouchable. Turns out all it did was make them flammable. And now the match had been lit. The boardroom was always cold, even in summer. Overly air-conditioned, like they were trying to freeze emotion out of every decision. But that morning, the chill wasn't just from the vents. Came from the looks. No pastries, no coffee cart, just folders, laptops, and tension so thick it might have needed its own name badge. An emergency session. No agenda, no pleasantries. Just the kind of silence that only shows up when reputations are about to be carved into pieces. Mark sat 3 chairs from the head of the table, pale and blinking too often. He looked smaller than usual, like someone had turned down the saturation on his ego. The CFO sat beside him, arms folded, jaw tight. Legal counsel was to the left, already sweating through a silk blouse and trying very hard not to make eye contact with anyone. Then came the chair, Georgia Bancroft. Steel gray hair, heels sharp enough to gut a salmon, and an expression that didn't change for anyone under indictment or worth less than 8 figures. She tapped a single folder in front of her. It bore 1 sheet of paper. The termination notice. Mine. She looked to legal. Voice flat. Did we breach? The head of legal, to her credit, didn't dodge. She just nodded once and said, yes, there's a clear paper trail. Clause 7.6, C, was active. It was signed during the 2020 restructure by prior leadership. It was never revoked or waived. The system was built to trigger execution automatically upon any material breach. Georgia raised an eyebrow. Was this clause known to current leadership? Mark jumped in. It was buried. In an appendix. Nobody flagged it during transition. Legal didn't even surface it during contract consolidation. HR filed her departure as voluntary. I didn't. Stop, Georgia said. Not loudly, but it hit like a gavel. Mark froze mid-gesture, one hand still lifted like he was conducting a blame symphony. He let it fall slowly. Legal started flipping through a binder. There are likely other contracts containing identical or similar language. We're investigating. At least 2 resignations this week could be tied to similar concerns. It's unraveling, Georgia finished, still not looking away from Mark, because one woman read her contract. The silence afterward wasn't dead. It was loaded, like everyone was waiting for the first body to hit the floor. Mark tried again, weaker this time. Look, this was a routine cleanup. She wasn't mission critical. We were advised. Georgia finally moved. Slowly. She reached into her folder and pulled out the printed termination notice. The one where Mark had scribbled adverse action, 0 severance in the margin. Like it was a joke. She held it up between two fingers and stared at it for a long second. Then she laughed. Not a happy laugh. Not amused. A laugh soaked in disbelief and venom. Like watching someone slip on ice and drag a dozen people down with them. This, she said, waving the page once before dropping it flat on the table, is what happens when men who think they're clever play chess without looking at the board. Mark opened his mouth. Closed it. The CFO didn't move. Legal looked like she wanted to crawl into the binder. Georgia looked down the table. Any future termination with equity implications now requires pre-clearance from this board. Effective immediately. No one objected. No one even breathed. Mark leaned back, trying to summon whatever defiance he had left. But it was gone. Hollowed out by the weight of 10 million missing dollars and one clause he never bothered to read. As for me, I was already in the system's rear view. Unreachable. Untouchable. The ghost that broke their rhythm with one piece of paper and 8 years of silence. They tried to erase me. Now my signature lived in every conversation they'd ever have about oversight, process, and damage control. And the best part? I didn't even have to show up. The trust office was quiet. Carpet soft, walls beige. The kind of sterile calm only rich people ever find comforting. A young man in a pressed vest greeted me at the front with a clipboard and a practiced smile that didn't quite reach his eyes. Probably thought I was somebody's assistant. I didn't correct him. Just gave my name and ID, signed where he pointed, and watched as he slid a folder across the desk with practiced precision. Inside, confirmation of full transfer. All funds accounted. RSUs liquidated. Taxes reconciled. Wire complete. $9,432,870. Give or take a coffee. He handed me a receipt and said, "You're all set." That was it. No balloons. No toasts. Just ink on paper. Weightless. Silent. Final. As I stepped back into the sun, my phone buzzed. News alert from one of those business outlets with way too many charts in their thumbnails. Acquisition delayed amid legal disclosures. Let's Durham requests revised terms following compensation audit. I didn't smile. There was nothing sweet about it. This wasn't triumph. It was inevitability. A slow clock winding down to the moment the gears slipped and the whole machine shuddered. They'd built their empire on shortcuts, speed, and the assumption no one below the C-suite ever reads the fine print. But I wasn't below them. I was beneath them in the foundations, in the legal footnotes, in the ductwork of their precious systems. I passed a bakery on the way home, bought a croissant, ate it on a bench while traffic snarled and suited men shouted into Bluetooth earpieces like they were summoning gods. Somewhere, a boardroom sat one chair short. The same one where Mark used to smirk through layoffs like he was handing out raffle tickets. His name had already been stripped from the company's directory. No farewell memo. No tribute. Just gone. Later that day, a new internal memo went out. Someone forwarded me the screenshot. Subject: Termination Protocol Update. Body: effective immediately, all employee offboarding decisions involving equity, deferred compensation, or contractual obligations must receive full executive and board review prior to execution. Translation: never let another ghost into the machine. I didn't reply. I didn't need to. I walked into my apartment, poured a glass of wine, and finally let the quiet settle. Not the kind that hums with tension or grief, but the kind that means it's over. That everything worked exactly as it was designed to. Not by accident. Not by spite. By precision. Because they thought I'd scream. Thought I'd beg or burn or bang on the doors they locked behind me. But I didn't. I just signed what they forgot to read.